Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We kind of prepped for WeSock last week, and I hope you had a good WeSock if you joined us on Monday. And I'd kind of like to open this session up for questions again. I think sometimes we don't do enough Q&A and answer your guys' questions. So let's put that out there and let's go ahead and move forward with that. And unmute yourself, type in, go ahead and fire away. Anything goes.
And I think I made it so you guys can just regularly unmute yourself there. Yeah. So if you have a question or anything like that, you can unmute. And then always feel free to type in as well. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Hi there. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was a very powerful, wonderful experience for Wesak on
Oh,
Monday
good. I'm
morning.
glad you enjoyed it.
It
Yeah.
was really beautiful. So really, really grateful for that. My question actually
Mhm.
is about, we've talked so much about trauma loops, right? And
Mhm.
we get stuck in these loops and they get stuck in the body. And we can do different things with our healing and our prayers and our practices to unwind these loops. My question is, we've talked so much about how the body can get stuck in a trauma loop, like pretending and thinking that it's still happening. Is there
Mhm.
a way or a reason why we don't get stuck in a, I'm going to call it a happy loop, where the body can
Yeah,
remember that something good happened to us?
yeah. And sometimes we do, but the tendency is the stronger the emotion or the more repetitive the thought. And if you think about it, we usually have a stronger reaction when something, I mean not necessarily, but emotional reaction when something negative happens, but especially the mind, the loops. We tend to think about them repetitively when something negative has happened. And so the goal is to do exactly what you're saying, is to have these bigger experiences, these deeper experiences, these more loving experiences, and establish those as a loop, because the nervous system is going to do that no matter what. And it's just like, if we could just give it the right, data or food or whatever we want to call it. And so if you think about, you know, being around a loved one or somebody you care about, it might not be on the immediate interaction, but because of the past and the way you have felt about that person over a period of time, there is a kind of loop that happens in a very positive way, um, that is about activating the heart or having these good feelings, or just, how you have a friend and maybe you haven't even seen them for 10 years, and you go and you pick up right where you left off. In a way, that's a kind of loop. And the goal, even for our spiritual development, is to have enough deeper experiences to where those loops become more about those higher experiences rather than our primal or lower drives.
Mhm.
And so, the treatment of the trauma loops, for one, it brings us like a better quality of life. But two, it kind of makes space for those other things to happen.
Mm.
If we have a bunch of trauma in us, then when we do have those positive experiences, it almost kind of diminishes them somewhat. Or it's like trying to listen to somebody talk while there's a bunch of people yelling. Like, it's too loud, it's too distracting. And so, you know, the more that you, I would say, activate the heart when you're interacting with people or a certain experience and being present with it, it does cause like a kind of loop because it is a big emotional impression there as well. I think sometimes when we're in those trauma loops that we're a little bit on automatic, thinking and behavior and automatic feeling, and where we've got the story from the past and it doesn't allow us to feel the goodness to such a degree. And you could even look at the idea of an altar or like a shawl. We look at it from an energetic point of view of you sit in front of the altar or you put the shawl on and you kind of pick up where you left off from last time and there's an energetic imprint and you put the shawl on and the heart activates and the crown activates. But I would say that even that is a kind of loop, your body can be around things that might have an energy to them, but sometimes we don't really recognize them or we don't allow for the heart to like activate. And so you experience it, but then you don't really like have the imprint. And I go back to, I had this one relic one time and I don't know, like it was, I mean, if I'm being super honest, I wasn't ready for the relic. Like, it was like, yeah, it's tied to, such and such deity and everything. And at the time, it was just kind of, I don't know. I didn't think negative of it. It just wasn't my jam at the moment. And, I had it for a while and I would look at it and I can't really say that I felt anything. And, as a little bit of time went by, I started to develop a relationship with that deity. And then I learned more about the relic and I was like, whoa. And then I started kind of tapping into the relic and oh my God, like it's so strong and so powerful. But I don't know. I don't want to say that it was like I didn't allow myself to experience it, but sometimes I think these things are so subtle that we have experiences and they don't necessarily register. And I nothing changed like that. It's not like I prayed over the relic or, cleaned it up or did anything. I just was like present with it. And when I became present with it, I was like, oh my God, how did I not feel this? How did I not see this? But, you know, trauma gets our attention, you know, the more subtle things. I mean, that's part of a spiritual practice. It's actually even a thing with a relationship, it's you cultivate a relationship, you take care of a relationship, you don't just take it for granted. And the reason being that it's so subtle that, could go away. You could not feel it, you could not be present with it. And the positive imprints, we have to kind of be present with them a little bit. Trauma is just, hitting us over the head and our body has a lower response and it feels displaced or freaked out about what might happen or pain. And so our body and our instincts and our emotions have a response, but the more refined things, it really does take being it's not so much that you have to connect with something, but you have to be present with it. And in being present with it, or just being present, you do start to connect to something, you know.
Mhm.
Like
So like
I go back to this one time I was teaching in Huntsville, Alabama, this was many years ago. And we were using this venue that was a church, but it was a big giant house that had been converted to a church. And they had like this big library full of theosophical writings. And I don't know, the congregation was probably only like 15 people. It was not a lot of people, you know. And it was just it it looked like a place that only had 15 congregants. There was like kind of sporadic furniture. There was a weird thing on the wall here and there. Um, it was just kind of weird. And, I'm sitting there teaching and, doing my thing. And and I'm looking around and I don't know. the more that I was teaching, I could feel something. And I was like looking around going, what I'm feeling makes no sense in this, this, this house or this church or whatever you want to call it. And it was like 2 stories. I walked around upstairs like I could not put two and two together. And there was this weird small picture of Christ, but it was done almost like it was almost like a tonka. You know how they have like the plate around the head, and it didn't look like a normal image of Christ. And I was sitting there and I was teaching and I was teaching and I was teaching, and I found myself like I was teaching, but I was teaching like this because it was up on the wall, almost like even with me. And I was doing that to the point where people were starting to make comments because I'm not looking at them. I keep looking at that picture, and I was like, there's just something up with that picture. I just don't know what's up with that picture. And I was looking at it and I was like, it wasn't like it was hand painted or something. It was, um, looked like a print of something. And so I started like on a break, or it might have like stopped the class, and I asked the person who was in charge, I was like, what's the deal with the picture? And I liked it so much, I was going to offer him like $50 for the picture, $100. I mean, you could tell nobody cared about that picture. And I was like, it's a nice picture. Maybe I'll offer him $50 or something. And they go, yeah, that was the founder, like the founder, you know, that was one of the possessions of the founder. And I was like, huh, okay. It's this church was not a thing that I'd ever heard of. And I go, well, what's the name of the founder? And they go, oh, it's like Mary something, Mary this or Mary that. And they were quiet. And I was like, yeah, it's not registering. And they go, oh, it's not Mary, it's Alice Bailey. And I was like, excuse me? And they go, yeah, this church was started by Alice Bailey. And I was like, seriously? And they go, yeah. And I go, that was one of Alice Bailey's possessions. And they go, yeah. And I stood there and I just I was like, that's why I was so drawn to it. But when I first walked in, I was just like, you know, I think I offered him $75. And he goes, yeah, we'll take it. We'll take the 75 for that picture. And it's like, don't be selling that picture for $75 to some Yahoo coming in. That is a relic of your guys' organization. And he was like, eh. And I go, no, you can't do that. And it wasn't until I felt more present that I felt that picture.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like walking in, I looked at it, I was like, oh, pretty picture. Didn't think twice about it. And the reason that I'm telling that story is I think there's a lot of times where things happen in our life and would have much more of an impact if we were present and just kind of quiet and then started to feel the different things around us, it would have a greater impact in that area, like you're saying.
And that's beautiful, because that kind of answers a question about I've been wondering about. So I understand what you're saying about, the impact that trauma has, because we're so reactive and it's so
Hmm.
and I've been wondering about, so how do we reprogram ourselves so that these other things have as much weight for us, right, in one sense,
Hmm.
as those heavy duty, difficult things. And what you're saying makes complete sense. It's like, well, being present with them, making sure to really be open to them and anchor them in our bodies. Because I was thinking
Hmm.
about how impactful Wesak was, right, that morning, and
Hmm.
meditation and all that. And it's like to be able to like anchor them in my body, so that that's
Hmm.
more of what my body wants to live in and recreate.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say the thing that breaks us out of the trauma loop itself is shifting out of intellect, which is the repetition and maintenance, and shifting more to the intuitive part where it's observation and spontaneity. And I'll use that situation again. When I walked in, I'm looking at how to set up the room. I go, oh, there's a picture on the wall. Oh, it's Christ. Oh, it's da 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 da. Very intellect. I'm just looking at details, assessing the situation. This is what I need to like teach the class. This is how we're going to set it up. I was very in my mind. I was very in my mind. And then when I got settled and started teaching, I started becoming more aware, like I was starting to be more in the intuitive part of the mind. And once I started to have that intuitive experience, all of a sudden I'm like, what's this deal with this picture? I
Mhm.
had already looked at the picture a couple of times and didn't think twice about it.
Mhm.
But when everything got kind of quiet and I was observing the students and observing the class flow, and I was very much in observation mode. All of a sudden I was like, what's that thing on the wall? Like, you know what I mean? And that's how we heal the old traumas, but it's also how it's the remedy for the trauma to, trauma is also the remedy for what you're asking about, is like how do we have the repetition of like love and sense of well-being, and of light, and higher experiences and all these things. And it's the same mechanism.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, can you believe it? There was two churches that were about from Alice Bailey that, you know, just out in places where you wouldn't think, you know.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Would you explain if it's possible when the person who experienced so much traumas
Mhm.
be able to automatically do regression by going to that spot when they were a child and that was good? The reason I'm asking because I do this a lot. I
Okay.
go back, this for me is regression. I
Mhm.
go to that area that in my childhood, I jump in the water in this very beautiful spot with a lot of other children, which has other
Mhm.
children around. It's amazing. I survive all the traumas. Almost, I still going through traumas, but I don't let that trauma paralyzed me. I have compassion for people.
Mhm.
And as I age, I'm more kind of compassionate to them. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, I'm on the alert about what they can do to me if I get too kind, too involved without protection of which I create this, which is God. I believe that He protects me with His divine circle
Mhm.
of light, irony of life. You focus, you tell us that we are protected by the white light.
Mhm.
How do you see this as
So the idea of being surrounded by the pure white light is literally a manifestation of the observation that we were just talking about. Like as you turn into the observation mode, that is the aspect that is the intuitive mind, which is, the problem solver, the innovator, the aspect of our mind that learns, overcoming obstacles, healing, but it's also how we process information from the soul. And so we're affirming that we're surrounded by the white light. It's not something that's separate from us, but like me with that picture, Like I was very intellectual when I looked at that picture. And then when I sat down and settled down, I could feel that there was something much greater with that picture. And the point of view from the intellect is we look at all the details of the things in our past and we see them as things like, this thing happened, that thing happened. And when you turn on the observation mode and observe not just the good, but even some of the bad things, we break out of those loops. You're literally manifesting that being surrounded by the white light. And, even in these situations, we're not repeating the negative pattern. It's only goods coming to me, only goods going from me, even though like difficult things might have happened in the past. But I would say part of how we grow and develop is dealing with whatever difficulties life has presented to us. And so being able to be in that observation mode is literally kind of processing and working through that and bringing light to those situations versus seeing it and repeating the thoughts or the feeling. And a lot of times when we're in intellect about it, we try to hold it away, like we try to keep it out, and that really kind of almost like turns off the observation component of the mind. And so by observing the situation, observing it in our body, observing the thoughts that arise, we kind of work through those old things and break out the repetition, and we bring light into that situation. And so, recalling good times is very good, but the heart has to experience it all. Like we can't really like pick and choose like the things that we're gonna from our life that we experience. If we can observe even the difficult things, the heart keeps getting bigger, which then makes the potential for white light and the intuitive mind to get much greater. And we keep bringing more and more white light. And like you said, you feel love, you feel compassion, you feel gratitude, even in the face of difficulties. The mechanics of that is the observation mode, the part of us that watches.
A lot of sacrifice to be
Mhm.
able to maintain this purpose. Do you believe it? Because I did experience like a master from the Tibet.
Mhm.
Sometime you can see I have a picture over there I found. He looked like that. He showed up to me. I see
Mm,
him. He wasn't real.
mhm,
It's interesting. I lived in Asia and I could not believe myself,
mhm.
So it's possible, or
Yeah,
it's
oh, teachers will
imagination.
definitely come to you in dream time and or maybe in deep in meditation or reflection. Yeah, sure.
And he stayed with me because, especially with your meditations,
Mhm.
it's very, thank you for your teaching.
Oh,
I
you're so sweet.
am
Thank you.
synchronized with this master
Hmm.
more and more, and it's benefiting my love of compassion to others.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, like when a teacher or a master shows up like that, it's quite the blessing. And like you said, like aligning or synchronizing with it, you know, uh, connecting with it, and even trying to have like a little bit of a oneness practice. Like it sounds like that's what you're calling syncing, or synchronizing with it. Quite the blessing. That's one of the ways that, like how we were talking about before, is in different practices. You would see a great teacher or a deity, and like you were saying, synchronizing. You would also try to like feel it in your body, just like how we go through and we feel the the traumas and the trauma loops and everything, and we kind of break out of those. Like a deeper practice is like feeling the teacher in the body, or even visualizing the teacher. Like when the master shows up, you see kind of an image and go, okay, the teacher is inside me, like, like you see it, like their face is where my face is, their arms are where my arms are, their legs are where my legs are. And you sit and just kind of hold that in a meditation, and your physiology, your body creates like a deeper connection and a deeper response to that particular like being or deity, that master. Yeah. So good for you. That's super, super great thing.
And we do have a few minutes. I don't know, we had a couple chat questions. I don't know if we have time, but the first one is how to distinguish between trauma loops versus karmic patterns, how to break generational karma that affects previous and next generation as well.
I would say that you don't really need to differentiate, whatever is the presenting pattern in your life or pattern that's in your face at the time. I would work it, and it could be a trauma loop, but a lot of times the things that we struggle with, we also kind of came in to struggle with. You know what I mean? And so I wouldn't spend a lot of time differentiating. When I was younger, I really did try, but I don't know that I ever came up with a good answer, and I don't know that there was for me, there was ever a value for it. It's all about the practice, be it that it's trauma from this life, a karmic issue, or something that comes in through the family. The goal is it's not about what the issue is, it's about how you think. It's always about how you think. It's not about the details, it's about how you think in the face of the details. And I would say just keep fine tuning the observation and how you think. Yeah. Yeah. So we need to move over to the mystic vibration. And how about we'll just continue this, but in mystic vibration as well.
Okay.
So,
So your chat questions, your other things, yeah, go ahead and let's bring them on over to the next session.